Last year, I introduced legislation that was included in the FY 2016 NDAA, which allowed Native Hawaiian organizations to qualify for the Hub Zone program. I understand, this is my second year, but I understand this has been many years in the making. Can you give me a timeline as to when SBA will be able to release the corresponding regulations for this particular change?
Sure. A rule generally, as far as, I come from the private sector. I've been here now 4 years, but I come from the private sector, and coming to this side of the fence, it is awakening a little bit with respect to the rulemaking process. But not only do we have to draft the rule internally and get it cleared through our building and through our general counsel's office, but then it has to get interagency clearance throughout all federal agencies, right? Because our rules oftentimes have an impact upon our sister agencies. The interagency review period on a proposed rule oftentimes is 90 days. Then we get it back and we make adjustments, but then I think it's important, and I think you would all agree, that we have a public comment period, because when we make rules, we want to make sure that our constituents understand the impact with respect to how it's going to impact their business. And not only that, we want to make sure that we gather their comments and incorporate that in. So that's another 90 days. So that's 2 3-month periods. So that's a total of 6 months right off the bat, and that's not even the rulemaking process, drafting, right? Once we have incorporated the comments from the public, we will go out for a final 90-day period for our interagency, our sister agencies, to comment. That is a total of 9 months, not including any drafting of rules in that respect. I will add that with respect to provisions where the intent of Congress are very clear, as an example, the women-owned small business sole sourcing provision, or the removal of the caps and the women-owned small business program, we were able to work with our sister agencies, with OMB, to issue an interim final rule to go out relatively quickly in a matter of 6 months. What we're doing right now with respect to the NHO provisions and the Hub Zone provisions is trying to determine if we can move in a interim final rule process, or do we need to go through the entire rulemaking process?
Okay, so notwithstanding the 9 months that you mentioned, and this amendment also included disaster zones.
That's
right. And disaster zones and BRAC. So there's 3 components.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're going to move them all together.
Yes.
How much time is it going to take for your office to get up to the 90 days? The 9 months.
Yeah. We work closely with our Office of General Counsel. As was mentioned earlier, we have a number of provisions that we're working to finalize, including the mentor-protege rule, limitations on subcontracting, et cetera. I think we can work. I don't want to commit to a time frame, but I think, relatively speaking, 3 months, 4 months to draft something that could go out for interagency comment is reasonable.
Great, thank you. Over the past few years, we have seen the average dollar value of small business contracts go up, and a fewer smaller firms participating in the marketplace. This is especially true with some of the SBA programs in which we have seen the number of participants actually decline. Why do you think this trend is occurring, and what actions is the SBA taking to reverse it?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think that's a really important question, in the sense that the federal government, as we all know, has to buy smarter, right? We need to figure out how to reduce budgets and buy smarter. And sometimes what that has looked like is consolidation of requirements into larger requirements and more complex requirements. And what happens then is you have a more complex and larger requirement that sometimes a small business can't pursue. We have been working closely with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy and GSA to make sure that when that happens, when a requirement comes out that's consolidated or more complex, 2 things. One is we received authority from Congress to allow for better teaming for small businesses, right? In other words, opportunities for small businesses to team up and jointly go after these larger and more complex projects. That's one that we're working on and hope to have finalized shortly. The other is if we are setting up vehicles that are multi-year and very broad, are we casting a broad enough net to bring in small businesses to participate? And do we have on and off ramps? In other words, if a limited number of small businesses are participating and we're hitting our small business goal, that's a good thing, right? But we want more small businesses to participate. So do we have on and off ramps to allow new small businesses to come on to do the work, while the ones that have grown can graduate from that particular vehicle? So there are certain things that we're trying to implement in this environment to ensure that small businesses play a fair share in the marketplace.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.